welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hi, my name is Anna, and welcome to Fantasy Expert Week 4 and 5, and the reason why I decided to join both weeks is because I know I haven't been filming much of Fantasy Expert, and the reason why is because I've been taking my time reading, or better, rereading The Magician by Raymond Feist, because I did say I was rereading this so I could analyze it and apply everything that I've learned so far, and that has been a journey, my friends, because I thought I was going to take, 1 month to read this. Tell me why it's been 2 months. It's literally been 2 months, and the funny thing is, I said in the first episode that I ever filmed of Fantasy Expert that I was going to be rereading the entire trilogy in 2 months. It's been 2 months and I've read the first book. Like, what the hell do you mean? Like, how could this happen? Life, gets in the way, and then you just don't have time for anything, because here's the thing, I'm also the type of person that does a lot of projects, and that's what's happening. I have a lot of projects, I have content to do for Instagram, for TikTok, I'm writing a fantasy novella, I am also, writing my thesis, so it's a lot. It's a lot, so of course sometimes this has to be on the back burner, unfortunately, but I am rereading it and I'm almost done. As you can tell, like, I'm almost done with this. And let me just start by saying I've been having the time of my life, okay, because this book is literally classic fantasy at its finest. It's classic fantasy at its best, and I read this back in 2019. Like, this was what introduced me to fantasy again. I am absolutely having the time of my life with this because I know the story, I know what's gonna happen, and I love these characters. I love everything about this world, and I missed it so much. And does it hold up, to the highest standards? No, it does not. I've read way too many books that are so much better than this one, but this still has, a special place in my heart because of how it made me feel, because it was my first ever, not first ever fantasy book by any means, but it was the first book that I was like, wow, fantasy is actually pretty cool. And having that in mind, of course, I have been taking some notes, so I'm pulling out my, trusty notebook because I cannot remember shit for the life of me, okay? I'm really bad. My memory is awful, okay? So, in chapter 1, this is where we have the exposition. Of course, like I said, and like I talked about in the plot structures, this is where everything starts, not everything starts happening, but this is where everything is presented to us. The character, the other characters, the world building, the plot, the story, the tone, the premise, just literally everything. And what I can tell so far about the world building is just, it's very much inspired by European medieval times, so it's nothing different, literally nothing different. The culture is the same, the social hierarchy is the same, the society is the same. The only thing that is pretty much different is just, the places and the names. All of that is different, but even the creatures here are very much similar to our own, so that is not difficult at all to understand, which is amazing. And even in this first chapter, we can understand some of the social hierarchies that exist. So, for example, everyone is born a free man, so they can all make their own choices, they can all choose their own destiny, their own fate, but you do have, some instances where you do have slaves, but that's very, very rare in this kingdom. So you understand that slavery is not really a common thing. Everyone is born a free man, and everyone can do whatever they want to, whatever they're passionate about. So everyone, it's a nice country. It's a free country, if you will. And we also understand that mages are not really well seen. So when Pug meets Colgan for the first time, and he's, the magician of the village, which is Creed, and he works for the Duke, and he looks at him with a lot of mistrust because mages in this world are not respected at all. People don't like mages because they see him they don't see them as con artists, but they just do not trust magic by any means. They think it's very sketchy, it's very weird, it's hard to understand, and, they just see the magicians or mages as tricksters. So obviously Colgan suffers a little bit from that stereotype, unfortunately, but because the Duke respects him so much, people don't really give him a hard time, but you can tell that Pug is like, I don't know if I like you, okay? I don't know if I like you, but as you can tell literally by the title of the book, it's called The Magician. So, we all know that Pug is going to start trusting Colgan very, very soon. And then one thing that I found very interesting is that you need to learn how to expose your world. And one way that the author did this in the first chapter was, for example, Pug, he went to, I think he went to collect shells near the ocean. Well, obviously, where else are you going to find shells? Sometimes I say things that are just so redundant. But anyways, he went to collect shells, and then a huge summer storm came. It was an early storm. And what I mean by an early storm is that usually storms that big don't come so early in summer, but one came anyways. It was very windy, it was raining a lot, and Pug was having a lot of difficulty getting back to the village. So a man found him in the forest and took him to Master Colgan's cabin, because of course a magician needs to have a wood cabin in the middle of the woods. That is mandatory, and we later learn that that man is the apprentice of Colgan. So he goes inside, and Colgan is like, okay, try and read something. And Pug doesn't know how to read. He doesn't know how to read. No one has taught him how to read. So Colgan is teaching him how to read just to spend the time. And when Colgan is teaching him how to read, he understands not only that Pug is a fast learner, but we can all, and this is how the author uses the situation to describe the world building, because Colgan is teaching Pug, and the book that he is using to teach Pug how to read is a book about, the story, or the brief story about all the kingdoms, how everything was formed, how everything came to be united under one king, all that kind of stuff. So this is an example of how you can use a situation in your favor to, expose the world building. But in this first chapter, this is all I got from the world building. It's still not, it's not amazing, it's not a lot, but it is just the first chapter, so I'm not expecting, a whole lot of information. When it comes to the character, so we can learn that Pug, he is an adventurer, but he's also a little bit lazy, because when he was picking up the shells, the whole reason why he was caught in the storm was because he fell asleep. He was so tired, he was like, you know what, I think I can just fall asleep here in these rocks with the sound of the ocean, with the waves, and he fell asleep, and now he even lost the bag of shells because he fell asleep. I don't know how to say this in English, but the tide got up. I really don't know, the tide got up, so the rocks where he was sitting, they were becoming, covered in water, and then the storm came, and Pug, he was panicking, he tried to run away, he lost the bag of shells, so we can tell that he's, adventurer, but he's a little bit lazy because of that, because he just, didn't really care, and he even knew that if he didn't really bring back the shells, the cook was going to be really, really mad at him. He goes with Colgan's apprentice, he enters the cabin, and even though he is so distrustful of Colgan, he's a sweetheart, okay? He's an old, really kind man, and he doesn't really care about social status, in the sense of, because Pug, obviously he is, of a social status lower than him, because he is a master. He doesn't really care that Pug is mistrustful, and Pug is a little rude at times. He doesn't really care about that. He also doesn't really care that he is, above him, and he doesn't mind teaching Pug how to read, how to write, any of those things. So you can just tell that Master Colgan, he is a cutie pie at heart. He's the kind old man that we all love and that we all need. So I absolutely love that. And obviously, like I said previously, you can tell that Pug, he is a fast learner. So he is a typical, orphan boy. He doesn't have anyone. He just has one best friend, and he is shorter than everyone else. So, he's a very short boy, small boy. He doesn't really have, a lot of strength. So you can also tell that he's going to be an underdog in this story. But he is a fast learner, and Colgan is very, very impressed with him. So you can already tell that something's going to happen between the two of them. So obviously by the title, it is called, the magician, the apprentice. So you can understand already that Pug is going to become Colgan's apprentice, because Colgan gave him a magical object. I think it was, a magical crystal ball for him to see, and Pug actually saw a lot of things. He saw it very, very clearly, and Colgan was like, oh my god, this is so hard to do. Even masters have a hard time seeing through the crystal ball, but yet you saw it. You saw things, and that is actually impressive at your age, because I think he's 13. So you do understand right away that, the author is setting up this basis for Pug to actually become the apprentice of Colgan and to become a really great magician, because he's also a fast learner. And then in this first chapter, you do also have a lot of symbolism, because it starts off with a storm. And even though the author says, storms are very common in this region, in this coast, you can understand that this is a bad omen, because the storm is much stronger than it usually is at that time of the year. It is summer. They do have summer storms. It still feels weird. This summer storm feels weird, so you do have a bad omen there. But not only do you have a bad omen, I think Raymond Feist, he did something very clever, which was destiny. He played with destiny in the sense of Pug was destined to find Colgan. He was destined to find that cabin, and he was destined to, show Colgan that he does have what it takes to become a magician, because in this world, and I will skip to, I think, chapter 2, you do have, what is called the choice, which means that all children who are boys, they all, when they turn 13, they all have the chance to become an apprentice for something, for a certain master. If they want to leave, they can leave. They tell the Duke, I want to leave. I want to, follow my father's footsteps. I want to go to another village to do this, yada, yada, yada. So they have to tell that beforehand. Everyone, unites at the, I'm forgetting the word. I'm literally forgetting the word. the central plaza. I'm just going to call it a plaza at this point. The central plaza of the village, and all of the masters reunite, and they're calling names to pick, who they want as an apprentice. And of course, because that day is coming up, and we know that day is coming up, now we know, okay, Colgan was destined to find Pug beforehand because he wasn't going to pick anyone. He had, no reason to pick anyone. Nobody really wants to become a magician due to the social standards that they have. And he saw Pug and he was like, you're the one. You're the one. You have potential. I see it in you. So the storm also has that type of symbolism. Now, going to chapter 2, this is where we meet Pug's best friend, Thomas. And they are, different. They are night and day. They are not, they obviously have a good dynamic. They are very cheerful, extroverted. They really like each other. They're very goofy. But what I mean by they're night and day, the author, does a typical contrast of Thomas. He's beautiful. He's handsome. He has blonde hair or red hair, I think. I don't know which one. I think it's red hair. He has red hair. He's very handsome. He's tall, he's strong, he's 12, but he's already, built like a closet almost. So you do know he's popular with the girls, he's popular with the boys, he's just popular. And Pug, on the other hand, like I said, he's very short, he's the smallest of the bunch, and he's not really, handsome, he's just normal, normal looking guy. So he's not popular at all, but he does hang out with the popular kid. And the author, interestingly, does the same thing to the children's duke. So you meet Arutha and Liam, and they are also night and day, because Liam, he's tall, he's handsome, he's muscular, he also has blonde hair, he's just, amazing. And then you have Arutha, that is very similar to the duke, to his father, where he's just very lean, very skinny, he has dark brown hair, he has, a little bit of a beard, he looks very sunken, very serious. So I do like the contrast made between Pug and Thomas, and also Arutha and Liam, because I don't know, I just found it very, very funny. You also have the character that is mysterious, which is Martin. He's the man that is always in the forest hunting with a bow and arrow. He's amazing at it, he's mysterious, and these are all of the stereotypes that I could find when it comes to characters. And we do have a little bit of foreshadowing when it comes to Martin's character arc, because Martin, he's special in the sense of people don't really like him. And the reason why people don't like him is because he hangs out with the elves a little bit, and humans don't really trust elves. But not just that, because Martin, he didn't go through the choice, which means that he didn't, follow tradition, because he was so talented with the bow and arrow that he just didn't really need to go through the choice. He was just chosen immediately to become an apprentice. And that's why people don't really like him, because they're like, you didn't follow our tradition, you hang out with the elves, like, you're weird. Basically, you're an outcast because you're weird. So we do have a little bit of foreshadowing in the sense of, I feel like, and you can tell that Martin is going to be an important character, or he's going to have an important role in the future, a destiny of some sort. So this is a little bit of a foreshadowing in this chapter. And of course, we do have a little bit of world building, because we discover that elves exist in this world, and it's not done in the best way, in my opinion, because it's done through exposition, through dialogue, but it's a little bit repetitive, because we meet Martin, and they already mentioned that, oh, he hangs out with the elves, all this kind of stuff, and then they mention the elves again, because Thomas likes elves a lot. He is very curious about them, he wants to know more about them, and so we do have, a little bit of some repetitiveness there. We do have, of course, more information in the second, mention of the elves. It's very, subtle, it's very superficial, we don't know everything yet, but, it was a little bit repetitive in my opinion, but at least in this chapter, we get to know that elves exist, and of course, dwarves too, okay? Not in this chapter, I don't think so, I don't remember, but if elves exist, dwarves too. It's mandatory. And then in chapter 3, of course, Pug accepts to become Colgan's apprentice. He didn't, really envision that for him, because he wanted to be a knight, because which young boy doesn't want to be a knight? And he's studying, but we thought that Pug was going to be very good because of what Colgan said, but actually Pug is having a lot of difficulty. He learns very well, like I said, and he's very, very quick to learn. He understands everything. He memorizes everything. The problem is he cannot cast a spell. He just has some blockage in his mind. He's having a lot of difficulty casting spells. A lot of frustration is building up, which is not typical. Because when I read this book for the first time, I thought, okay, he's going to be a Mary Sue, or I don't know the version, the male version, so I'm just going to say Mary Sue. I cannot remember. So I thought he was going to be a Mary Sue. He was going to be good at everything. He was going to learn everything very fast. He was going to become like the greatest magician, very, very fast. But no, he's actually having a lot of difficulty. And Colgan, he's a little bit concerned, because he's like, I thought, he was actually good, but I'm not seeing anything. Like, I'm not seeing anything. I don't understand why he cannot do the things. Like, I saw the talent in him. I just cannot understand understand what is going on. I don't know how to teach him better. And there's a lot of frustration built on that. And you can tell that Pug is not perfect, because even when he goes out with the princess, with Caroline, with the daughter's Duke, he goes out, on a horse ride because she asked him to go. So they go, and he embarrasses himself because he cannot control his horse. So he's just, not the typical main character. But in this instance, they are attacked by trolls. And that also poses, a threat that something is wrong, because usually trolls go that far south. So that is also something that is copied by The Hobbit, in my opinion. But yeah, so they are attacked by trolls, and in this case, Pug actually manages to cast a spell, and that's how he defeats the trolls. And obviously we have the trope of pressure and in danger. This is how you cast spells. This is how you can actually perform magic. But Pug, afterwards, he can never repeat this. He can never repeat this. He just goes back to being, frustrated about not being able to cast a spell. He has a little bit more hope, because he's like, okay, I can do magic. Like, I see myself doing magic. I did magic. And now, obviously, he has a lot of rewards. He's being, well seen. The princess likes him. So now we are seeing the typical main character of he does something heroic. Everyone likes him now. He's famous now. And, of course, he's going to make enemies because of this. And like I said, he was going to make enemies, and then in this chapter, we are introduced to Roland, who is the princess' squire, and he likes the princess. He loves the princess, and now he's seeing the princess giving all of her attention to Pug, so he is going to become Pug's nemesis. We all need a nemesis, okay? We all need a nemesis, a rival. So, and we actually get to know more about Arutha, which is strange, because I thought we were going to learn more about Liam, but Arutha, you can kind of tell, because Roland and Pug got into an altercation, and you can tell that Arutha, he's very cold, he's very mean, and he was very mean to both of them. And of course, when it comes to Caroline, the daughter's Duke, she is a menace, okay? And what I mean by menace, she's a typical spoiled daughter. She thinks she's better than everyone. She treats people like they are trash, like they are nothing, that she's, above them all, because, technically she is, but you can just tell that she's a very, very spoiled brat. But when she goes out and walks with Pug, you kind of see that she only is this because it's kind of like a defense mechanism and armor, because she doesn't want to be hurt by people, and she understands that people don't really want to be her friend, because they just want her status, they just want her attention and all that comes with it. And that's why she's so put off and so mean and so spoiled, because she doesn't really want to get attached to people, because she has been hurt before, unfortunately. But still, it's still a menace, okay? It's still a menace. She's kind of annoying, but you do see that there is a lot of more to it, than just being a spoiled brat. There is complexity within Caroline, which is a lot of fun. Not only is there complexity with Caroline, we also have complexity with Pug's best friend, Thomas, because we see him as, very extroverted, very happy person, but he actually isn't sometimes. He does show a lot of doubts, because he doesn't really understand, what he wants to do in life. He does want to be a knight. He does know that, and he is very happy that he became, the apprentice to Fanon, which is the master of arms, so he is going to become a knight, but he does have a lot of doubts, because, Pug didn't go with him, so he's like, are we even going to be friends in the future? Are we going to be together in the future? Where are you going to go? Where am I going to go? Like, are we going to be separated? Are we going to stop being best friends? And to me, that just shows so much maturity coming from a 13-year-old boy, which is amazing. I just really liked how complex Thomas could be, because I don't want him to just be, the bubbly friend, the best friend that, you can count on me to be goofy and to do all of, the pranks and all that kind of stuff. But seeing them go deep, it was actually very nice. And like I said, we do have some foreshadowing with the trolls, because the trolls don't usually go that far down south, so they don't really understand, like, why are they going south? Why are they walking to our lands? They've never done this before. What is happening? So you do understand that there is something coming up. A bad omen is coming up. But not only do we have foreshadowing when it comes to, the trolls and their movements, we also have foreshadowing when it comes to Pug's reward, because the Duke, he gave him lands and a name, and he's going to be a lord one day when he's 18 years old. But there is one thing that the Duke gave him that he's not going to tell Pug, and he's going to tell him that when he's 18, there's going to be a letter that's going to be delivered to him by Father Tully, and he has to make a very, very important decision when that time comes. So you do have some sort of foreshadowing when it comes to this, because it will obviously be a very, very important decision. Do you know what it is? No, we do not, but we cannot forget that this is something important. And obviously we do have some world building. I'm not going to be here, saying what do we have, what we don't have. But the author does world building whenever he finds a chance. He does it through exposition and mostly dialogue. Like I said in previous episodes, I think dialogue is the best way to go, because obviously you do need to create a situation for it. You're not just going to lore dump everyone just because. For example, with Colgan and Pug, that's where you learn, mostly how the magic works in that world. Obviously, Pug is learning how to, control magic, how to perform magic. So obviously Colgan has to teach him how that said magic works. So that's where you get a lot of the magic system. It's pretty, soft. There's not a lot of rules by any means. You do have to, say things and cast spells. You do actually have to say the words, but, you know, that doesn't really seem to work for Pug for some sort of reason. He doesn't really know why. And we do also get, you know, a lot of world building when it comes to the kingdoms, the races in that world, and it all comes from meetings or people just talking about it, etc., etc. So I do understand that Raymond Feist prefers dialogue when it comes to show world building, which in my opinion is the preferred way. And when it comes to the storyline, the author chose the trolls to be Pug's first obstacle. So in my opinion, that is the first incident that happens in this story because it's his first big obstacle. This is where he uses magic for the first time. And it is small. Obviously, it starts as something very, very small. But it's also something, like I said, foreshadowing for the bigger thing. It is the first incident that he does have to face, and they have to, you know, question themselves, why are the trolls, you know, coming to our lands? Like, what is happening? We have to investigate this. So this is the first incident, in my opinion. And then in chapter 5, this is where, you know, all of the bad omen comes to a peak, let's say, because a mysterious ship actually ended up, you know, it's abandoned, ended up in the coast of Crete. And Pug and Thomas, they are the ones that find it, and they understand immediately that something is wrong because they do not recognize that ship. They do not recognize the people inside that ship, you know, their banners, their symbols, nothing. They do not recognize the clothing, the weapons, literally just nothing. So you do understand straight away that this is a bad omen because they don't know who these people are. They don't know what these people want. And even though, you know, most of the ship has been destroyed, they also find a scroll, and it's a very, very dangerous scroll because you can just tell, okay, you can just tell for the magic. So it starts off with a lot of foreshadowing in the beginning. And of course, with this, we do have, you know, a lot more character development. So, for example, when we do have the meeting where the Duke is, you know, has the meeting with the assembly and with everyone that he trusts, his son Narutha, actually, you can kind of tell that he is really, really intelligent. He's very intelligent. He's very smart because he's adding a lot to the conversation. He's making assumptions and conclusions, and he's just 15 years old. Like, he's just 15 years old, but you can understand that he is very smart and that he's going to be a very big asset for the team. And you also understand, for example, because Pug, you know, he's at that meeting. Pug and Thomas are at that meeting because they saw the ship. They were the ones that saw the ship before it sank. So they're just there, you know, telling everything that happened, everything they saw. And then obviously Pug leaves because he has nothing else to add to the conversation. And he finds Colgan, you know, being abducted because Colgan was analyzing the scroll because it turned out that the scroll was actually magical. So it obviously makes, you know, a lot of sense that Colgan, the master, you know, the master magician, actually analyzed the scroll, and he was being kidnapped because that scroll was not a safe scroll at all. And it was so funny because the guards were just staring at Colgan like, why is there a mysterious hand coming out of a portal and trying to drag Colgan into that said portal? And Pug, you know, he was shocked too, but you can tell that Pug is very brave and he has quick reactions because even though the guards were literally staring at Colgan being kidnapped, Pug was the only one that actually did something about it, and he dragged Colgan away, and then the portal closes and Colgan is safe because Colgan was trying to fight, obviously, his way through. He was trying to fight with magic, and he was very tired. He's very old. And Pug was the only one that actually managed to do something, so that also tells a lot about his character. And this is where we get plot point 1, because we discover, you know, with Father Tully, because he does have, you know, some magical abilities too, he actually, you know, one of them survived. One of the people inside the boat survived. Pug and Thomas were the one that found him. He's healed. He banged his head pretty hard, so he's not going to survive that long. But Father Tully actually entered his brain and his dreams, and he saw that, okay, this man is not from this world. Okay, we have a big, huge problem here because this man is not from this world. I do not know their people. I do not know their language. Like, they do not exist in this world. They came from another dimension, and this is where plot point 1 establishes. This is a big incident. This is where everything starts because now they're like, okay, we have invaders from another world. Like, what do you mean? And it's not like other worlds are completely unknown to them. They are, but they do have stories, you know, here in the world of Midkemia, they do have stories about people from other worlds. So it was kind of like a myth, a legend, and now that everything, you know, all of that came to fruition, into reality, they're all very much shocked, but not as shocked as they could have been, you know what I mean? So it's not shocked in the sense of like, oh my god, that is so stupid, we don't believe that. No, it's more like, okay, we didn't know this was real. Like, we thought these were just tales and stories, but this is actually real. But yeah, so the finding of this boat and the finding that these people are from a different world, a different dimension, and they are here for war, this is plot point 1. And this is all I have for you guys so far. Of course, I've read a lot more. Like I said in the beginning, I've read, you know, almost to the end. But this is what I have time to film today, okay, until chapter 5. I am enjoying this. I'm finding, you know, it's just so much fun rereading this. Not only because, you know, I've read the story before, but just applying everything that I've learned because I can actually see the plot structure in this. I can see so many character archetypes like I explained to you guys. I can see symbolism, foreshadowing. I can see everything. And it feels like, you know, I have a third eye, you know, like Game of Thrones, like Bran. Like, I have the third eye now and I can just just see everything. Like, nobody can fool me, nobody can trick me anymore, and I just absolutely love that. I'm loving this journey. I'm loving studying these fantasy books and understanding how they are just so good and so great, and I cannot wait to explain to you guys even more. So I'm just going to do all of the errands that I have to do for this day, and tomorrow I'm bringing you guys another update because I really need to talk to you guys about this story and everything that I've seen, because I just feel like a scholar, okay? I just feel like a scholar, and I feel smart up in here.
A few moments later.
I know I said I was only going to film tomorrow, but I actually had more time during this day, so I can continue with chapter 6 and 7 of everything that I've already analyzed. And in chapter 6, we actually get to understand why Pug has a lot of difficulty with practicing magic. And we learn that he is different. Here we go, people. Here is the famous trope of the main character is different from any other character that you've ever seen, or, for example, any other mage that Colgan has ever seen, because Pug is the type of person where he loves to understand everything. His mind works best when he understands everything to a fault. And he has to understand how everything works, how every piece of the puzzle, fits together. It's like he wants to disassemble the magic system and try to understand, like, okay, this piece goes with this piece because of this. And that's why he has a lot of difficulty with magic, because doing that with magic is almost impossible. Colgan says, like, it's very hard to understand magic because even us here in Midkemia, we do not understand magic at all. Like, there's a lot of things that we do not understand. There's a lot of things that we still don't know. So it's very hard for me to teach you when you have such a, practical and logical mind. And that's why Pug is having a lot of difficulty. So you can kind of understand, okay, he is different and he will have to find a different way to perform magic. We still don't know how that's going to happen. And once again, with Thomas, you do have a little bit more complexity coming from him because, like I said, he does seem like the extroverted, happy, chirpy type, but he is worried, like I said, about the future. Not just worried about his relationship with Pug, still being friends and whatnot, but now the fact that there are alien people coming from another world, another dimension, invading his world, and they don't really understand how they work. They don't know anything about them. And Thomas is scared. He's scared because he doesn't understand, like, what is the future, like, what's gonna happen? I just became an apprentice. I just became a squire. How am I supposed to go to war against these people? I don't know them. We don't know them. We don't know anything about them. We don't know how they fight. We don't know if they have magic. We don't understand how their magic works. They clearly understand magic more than we do. So it's just this whole thing, and I really appreciated that Raymond Feist took the time to craft Thomas in a more complex way. I was kind of afraid that Thomas was going to stay as a stereotypical, best friend, always chirpy, always happy, and I'm so glad that he isn't. And in this chapter, we do have a little bit more of world building, and like I said, this time he chose to expose the world building through the Council of War. So, the Duke of Creedy, I don't know if it's Creed, I'm just gonna say Creed, okay? And the Duke of Creed, obviously, he gathered his Council of War, and they were all discussing about the Tsunade movements, and by discussing these movements, we also understand, these mountains are here. That's a very important peak. That's a very important passage. It's very wintry here. There's a lot of snow. They cannot pass through that passage. You understand what I'm trying to say? So Raymond Feist utilized this tool as the Council of War, not only to strategize against the Tsunade, but also to explain to us the world a little bit better, so we do have more of an understanding. And not only that, in this Council of War, you had the elves. The Queen of Elves actually showed up, and obviously Thomas, he was so mesmerized because she is very, very beautiful, and she also went, which means that we also get to know a little bit more about the elves, especially because the Prince of Elves went to Pug's room. I don't know why. I don't remember now why he went to Pug's room. I think he just wanted to talk to Pug a little bit because I think it's because he wanted to know more about the ship, because Pug was one of the people that saw the Tsunade ship first with Thomas, and he was also the one that defeated the trolls. So the elf wanted to hear that tale and wanted to talk with Pug a little bit more, just so he could, just learn a few things. And of course, Pug also asked a lot of things about the elves, so you do get to know a lot about the elves through that conversation as well, which in my opinion was also very, very smart. And we do have a lot of foreshadowing because Father Toli, he has the ability to, read people's dreams, and that's what he did because they captured the Tsunade that was on the boat. He is still not dead. I do think he ends up dying because of his wound, but he does, manage to see his dreams, and he sees a lot of the intentions that the Tsunade want, and one of them is actually metal, because apparently in their world they don't have a lot of metal, and in Midkemia we have, here, if it's Earth, we have tons of it. He also suspects that there is something greater because he has seen, some sort of like black shadow, and he's saying like they are also running away from their world because their world is going to be attacked by some really horrible force that we don't know what it is, so their only choice is kind of like, okay, let's choose this planet because it has a lot of metal, and we don't have many. And also because, we really need to run away from that black thing. And then in chapter 7, we do have a lot of character moments. So, for example, Pug and Roland, they actually fight over Caroline, which in my opinion is so cringe, okay? It is so cringe, but, you know, it's kind of normal because they are both 13, 14 years old, so yeah, that tends to happen, but they fought over Caroline because they both like her, and it was, like I said, it was just so cringe, but I was actually surprised because they actually formed a friendship. They were actually like, you know what, this is not okay, like, this is not okay, this is stupid, and they just became, I'm not gonna say best friends, but they became buddies, which is actually so freaking funny because I thought that Roland was going to be more of a nemesis to Pug, at least throughout, like, half of the first book, but he's not. They're actually, like, really buddies now, which is so freaking cool, and I do like the fact that Pug is not the only one that is special. Thomas is also special in the sense of he is one of the best squires that the Master of Arms, I think his name is Fannin, has had in a long time. He doesn't say it to Thomas because he doesn't want Thomas to become, you know, very cocky and confident, but he is, you know, one of the best, and I do like the fact that Pug is not the only one that's going to be special because we understand, even though he does not do magic, we understand that he is going to be a great magician because the book is literally called The Magician, okay? So he is going to be a very great one, and unfortunately we don't have a lot of, you know, character development for Caroline. She's still very spoiled. She still uses that as a defense mechanism, but I really appreciated Pug's maturity because Caroline, she goes to his bedroom, you know, late at night, and she tries to, you know, kiss him, she tries to throw herself at him, but he is so mature. I'm actually surprised because even he was surprised with himself. He's like, the fact that I am out here resisting this princess, and she is gorgeous, drop dead gorgeous, and I am out here talking about our future, that I don't have many lands, that I don't have money, that I'm a nobody, and she has to wait. It's insane. Like, it was actually insane, and I was so happy that Pug was so mature about it. I was shocked. I think I found it funny that he was like, you know, having the motivation or knowing that her father is going to, you know, kill my ass if I do anything is a great motivation to not do anything. I thought that was really, really funny, but I really appreciated Pug's maturity because it shows that Pug is mature. It shows that he can make good decisions, that he thinks things through, and that is very, very valuable for a main character. And lastly, in this chapter, I do think we have some indirect foreshadowing when it comes to Pug because Pug tells Caroline, oh, like, I'm just going on this journey because now they have to go to the kingdom to talk to the king about the tsunami, what everything is happening, everything that they know. They have to talk to the king so the king can decide, okay, how are we going to proceed, what we're going to do. And Pug is like, it's just going to be one trip. When I come back, we're going to have so much time to be together. And it's foreshadowing because you know he ain't coming back. You know he isn't. Like, you know something really bad is going to happen and he's not coming back. So in my opinion, this is foreshadowing. And now I will leave you guys at this because now I really do not have more time to film. And I think, you know, talking about 7 chapters, I am enjoying this so much. Like I said, I'm having so much fun analyzing everything and just seeing everything with such clear eyes. It's actually amazing. I do hope you're enjoying this as well. I know it can be a little bit boring, just me here talking about the book and talking about like the plot structures, the world building, how he does this, how he does that, the character arcs, everything. But it's just so much fun, okay? It's so much fun to me. And I do hope this helps you in some sort of way if you do want to study fantasy as well. another update, and I'm going to update you guys from chapter 8 to chapter 14. I think this is, a good amount for today at least. And first things first, in chapter 8, we do understand, and this is where we see how altruistic Pug is and how much he does care about his friend Thomas, because Thomas got a really bad horse. So they are going on a journey to the king to warn him about the tsunami. They have to do something about it. And in this journey, Thomas does get a very bad horse. It's a very difficult horse to handle, and Thomas, he never had ridden a horse before. He doesn't know how to ride a horse. And because Pug knows how to, he's like, you know what, friend, we can trade. You can have my horse. My horse is nice. She is very gentle, and I can take your difficult horse. I at least know how to ride, so I can control him a little bit better, which is very nice. But there is also something else that is very interesting to me because, like I said, Pug, he wanted to be a knight. Every single boy wants to be a knight at one point in their life. But Pug could never be a knight because every time there is, some sort of combat situation, he freezes. He just freezes. He doesn't really know what to do. And obviously, he doesn't really need to know how to fight because they're not expecting that from him. But he still freezes. He still freezes. He doesn't really know what to do. Where, for example, Thomas, that he wanted to become a knight and he is going to become one day, he actually has a better response. He can at least run. Obviously, Pug, afterwards, he does run, but it's just that first moment where he just freezes and he's like, okay, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to respond. So it's good that Pug is actually not going to become a knight because he wouldn't be very good at it. And when it comes to the world building, everything has been much easier in the sense of because Pug has never left the village of Crete, he doesn't really know anything else about the world. So for Raymond the Feist, it is so much easier to explain the world to the reader and expose it through Pug's eyes because Pug has never seen it before. So you never have, that awkwardness of, okay, I live in this world, I know everything about it, but the reader doesn't. So how do I explain it? So how do I explain it in a way that it sounds natural, that it sounds, like the character is not over-explaining things or info dumping things? And with this scenario, with Pug not knowing anything outside of Crete, it's much easier to do so. I think Edagon does the same thing, where obviously Edagon is from a village and he doesn't know anything and he has never left it, so he doesn't really know how the world works. So the exposition of the world building is much easier when this happens. You do have in the beginning of this chapter a little bit of foreshadowing when it comes to the woods because they are crossing a big area of woods and everyone has a bad feeling. Everyone has a bad feeling, so you're like, okay, something bad is going to happen, and of course it does. But in this instance, I do find the story very, very repetitive because there's just always some sort of danger. They're always running away from the Mortadel? I don't know how you pronounce them, but they are the Dark Elves, okay? It's a version of the Dark Elves, and they live in these woods. So obviously they're always running away from them, and it just becomes very repetitive because it's just, always this thing. It's kind of like, okay, we run away. We stay in this place. We have to run away again. We are attacked. Let's run away. We get attacked again, and then we run away. It's just always this thing, and I understand that the author wanted to showcase how dangerous this forest is and how dangerous this, quest is, because obviously it is. But it's just repetitive, I was just so tired of it. I was like, okay, I get it. They're being attacked by dark elves. Dark elves live in these woods and they are horrible creatures. I get it. You don't always have to keep repeating yourself and repeating the same scenario over and over again because it just gets boring, frankly. And then in chapter 9, we do have a little bit more of world building because they finally meet the dwarves. And like I said previously, because the races don't really have, a lot of contact with each other, it's also much easier to do the world building because that way, if you don't know anything about a culture, you can ask away and have a little bit of that exposition and that info dumping without feeling, unnatural. Because like I said, with Pug, he also doesn't know anything about the dwarves, and so asking all of those questions, how it works, what's their religion, what is their culture, it totally makes sense. And in this chapter, they go, underneath the mountain. So they go through the dwarves' caves. And obviously, you do have a lot of foreshadowing because even the dwarves are a little bit scared going through these caves. All of the paths, all of the ways, they've memorized them. And they have, this natural ability to sense where they are underneath the ground and inside the mountains. So they're not, concerned about getting lost or whatever, but they are concerned with the creatures that lurk there. And obviously, they are attacked by some sort of specter, I think. It's a very horrible creature. And this is where you see the true courage that Thomas does have, because this creature, intercepts their band. So Puck is on this side, everyone else is on this side, and Thomas is on the other side. So you have the specter between both of them, and Thomas, he's staring at Pug and he's like, I know what I have to do. And Thomas, he just sprints the other way around, and the specter goes after him, and he doesn't know anything, about those tunnels. He doesn't know where to go, where he's going. He is running with the notion and with the realization that he's going to die inside those caves. There is just no way to get out because it's dark. He doesn't really know where he's going. He doesn't know those paths. He's not a dwarf. So it just truly shows how courageous and brave Thomas is, and how much, of a character character he does have to become a knight, it was a heartfelt moment because Pug, he was just like, I can't believe I just lost my best friend. Like, I have no one else on this world and I just lost my best friend. And then in chapter 10, obviously Pug, he's very distraught at what just happened. He doesn't really know how to process it because he has to process it, and he's crying, he's sobbing, but he also understands, like, we have to keep going, like, the journey has to keep going. And despite Arutha being shown, you know, and presented to us as a very cold, not a mean person, but he's just very cold. He doesn't really know how to showcase feelings. He doesn't really know how to interact with people. He was the first one to ask Pug, like, how are you? You know, I understand that Thomas was your best friend. Like, how are you holding up? Do you need anything? If you need to talk, I am here. And it just showcases a different side from Arutha. It just shows how, you know, wholesome he can be, you know. And then also in this chapter, we do follow Thomas, which I do like the adding of the other POV. So now we're following Thomas. He's just running around. He's not being chased by the Spectre anymore, but he doesn't know where he's going. And all of the tunnels, just all of the ways, he ends up finding a dragon. And I love that because it's another, you know, world building element. And we always need a dragon. When it comes to classical fantasy, we always need a dragon, and it's a golden one. And it's just amazing. And you kind of tell that something is going to happen there with Thomas and the dragon. You just don't know what yet. And then in chapter 11, you know, so far we've always been having so many things happening. You know, the rising action where we have so many obstacles with the dark elves in the woods, with the Spectre in the cave. So chapter 11 really is, you know, a pause. It's a breather for the reader in order to process everything, because even the characters need to process everything that happened. They need to understand, okay, how many people are left alive? How many people are wounded? Can we walk? Do we have horses? How are we going to, you know, go from here on out? How do we get to the kingdom? All of these kind of things. So this is everything that they need to figure out, that they need to understand. So it is very important when it comes to the story to have this little breather. And in order to have this little breather, they actually go to a small island, which is the Wizard's Island. And obviously you do have a lot of foreshadowing here because the wizard, you know, he's not very well described. People are very afraid of him. Like I said, magicians are not well seen in this world in Midkemia at all. And they call him, you know, the Dark Magician. So he has a very, you know, huge omen, and it's just a very, you know, bad vibes. Let's just say bad energy surrounding the reputation of this wizard, which is strange because the dragon was talking to Thomas, and he was talking like, oh, I met a wizard, you know, a few years back, like a lot of years ago I met him, and he's describing the same wizard, but he's describing him in a way that he is, you know, a good person. He's very helpful. He is very powerful. All these things, like he actually helped the dragon a lot. And the way that these people, Arutha and all the other people in the company, are describing the Dark Wizard is just such a big contrast, which I found really, really funny. But obviously, you know, the wizard is there. He's just, you know, dressed as someone else. He's dressed as some sort of like, I don't want to say traveler, but kind of like, you know, just a very minimal person. He's wearing minimal clothes. He doesn't say that he's a wizard. And once they find out, you know, because he went to talk to Pug, and this is where you can understand, like, the wizard does have a lot of plans for Pug specifically. Because of their conversation, you do have a lot of foreshadowing here. And only once he disappears, everyone realizes, oh, that was the wizard. Like, he's not so bad. Like, he's actually not so bad as we thought, because he was actually very, very nice. And the wizard did say, like, I have plans for all of you, but specifically for Pug. And in chapter 12, they actually finally get to Krondor, which is the capital of the kingdom. Now, they are not going to see the king. They are seeing the Prince of Krondor. So, you know, king and then the prince. And I really liked one character that he presented there, which was Anita. She is 6 years old. She is the princess, and she is actually set to marry Arutha. And she was so cute. And the reason why I liked this character in particular is because I think Raymond E. Feist really captured the essence of a 6-year-old. Like, she went to talk to Pug. She was very, very cute. She was like, who's Arutha? Like, who's Arutha? Like, tell me who it is. And Pug just, like, lightly points at Arutha, like, oh, he's there, like, sitting at the table at the assembly, talking about the tsunami and everything. And he points, and she's just like, oh, okay, like, he doesn't look too bad. And he's like, what do you mean? And she's like, oh, that's because I'm gonna marry him when I'm big. And it just felt truly like a 6-year-old. And then she like, okay, now I have to go because my parents are gonna see me and they're gonna be mad. And then she just like starts running away, and it's just adorable. It's really, really adorable. That's why I really liked this character, because she truly felt like she was 6 years old, and that is very hard to pull off. Like, writing children, it's very, very hard. And of course, in the dialogue in the assembly, we do have a little bit more of a world building, in the sense of we do understand that the king is not who he used to be, in the sense of he is kind of growing paranoid. He thinks that everyone is trying to kill him, everyone wants his throne, and him and the prince, they actually had a good relationship, but now they don't have a good relationship. The king, once again, he thinks that the prince is trying to scheme a way to kill him, to become the king because he doesn't want to be the prince and all that kind of stuff. So there is a very rocky, relationship between the king and the prince. So the political context is not good at all, which means that everything is just going to be much, much worse when it comes to dealing with the tsunade, because they are literally being invaded by aliens, yet the king and the prince cannot be united. Like, how is this ever going to work? So you do see some complexity in this world, because it cannot just be, everyone is a good person, everyone is up for it, everyone is up, okay, let's go march against these tsunade people, yay. Like, no, that's just not reality. Unfortunately, not everyone, wants to unite in order to face a new problem. In fact, some people want to take advantage of these issues to further their own agendas. And this is how the story is getting, the stakes are getting much, much higher, because now you realize, okay, the political context is not nice, it's not the best, we are not united, we have these alien people trying to invade us, we have the dark elves, migrating from one place to another. It's just the world is an entire mess, and everyone doesn't really know how to deal with it, they don't understand the tsunade at all, so it's just basically a complete mess. And in chapter 13, this is where they actually meet the king. And Pug meets the king by himself because the king wants to hear, what happened. Like, you were the one that found the boat. Thomas is not here, so please tell me everything. And Pug is trying to explain, and the king, he's just so paranoid and he's just so full of himself that he's just like, oh yeah, like, they're not really a big threat. Like, it was just in Crete, it's not a big deal at all. And he's just so paranoid with his own problems, with his own things. And Pug, this is where you can also tell that Pug is very smart, and because he tells, the king, like, no, just because they happen to be in Crete, they can be in other places in Midkemia, because haven't you heard the dark elves migrating? They're migrating for a reason. Haven't you heard the trolls coming down towards south, towards the villages of the people? Because there is a reason to. So the king really starts to understand, like, okay, this is more serious than I actually thought. Like, Pug is out here making points, he's making valid arguments, and the king doesn't really know how to dismiss them, and he's like, you know what, you actually might be right, you actually might be onto something, because everything is just a mess, everything is just happening at once, and the king is just, okay, it's kind of like he knew that the tsunade were going to invade the entire kingdom, it was just a matter of time, but he didn't really want to face that problem. He was just like, you know what, it's not happening now, so I'm not going to look at it, I'm not going to think about it. And Pug forced him to think about it, like, no, you have to face this problem, you have to face this issue, because we're counting on you, you're the king, we need your armies to face these alien people. And finally, in chapter 14, they do have a plan, because they find the tsunade camp, and they find, this sort of, like, portal in the middle of the camp. You imagine a big camp, and they have, like, a sort of portal here, and they have to find out, what the heck is that? Like, what is that portal? We need to truly understand how they are coming to our world. So, there's just, like, this very, very dangerous mission where Colgan, Meckham, and Pug, all of them, and obviously a few more knights, they all have to just, run to the center. It's really, a suicide mission, because they have to run to the center, face all of those tsunade. They know that only one person needs to come out of there alive to tell everything that is happening to the king, to report everything. And obviously Colgan has to go because he's a magician, so he's like, okay, I need to see what that portal is, what that device is. And what I do like in this chapter, and what I did like, was the fact that Pug is not the only one that is smart, because Meckham, which is the other apprentice of Colgan, he also found out, like, oh, the reason why the tsunade are here is because of the metal. I know I mentioned it before, but I got it wrong. I literally got it wrong. See, this is why when you reread, you think that it happened sooner, but it's not. Actually, Meckham is the one that finds out that they are after the metal. All the metal resources, because they don't have many, they just have leather, which is a good leather, by the way. It's very good leather. Even the Midkemian people, they do say, like, this leather is actually very, very good. Like, we don't know how they do this, we don't know what technique they use, but this is amazing. But obviously, nothing replaces good metal, good iron, good pewter, good copper, whatever, just whatever metal, nothing replaces that. So Meckham does get to that conclusion, and this is my observation, I just find it so funny how Meckham and Martin are so similar, because both of them are just very reserved, they know how to walk in forests, in the woods, they know how to fight very well. I think the only difference is Meckham uses the sword and Martin the bow and arrow, but still, I just find it so fascinating how both of them have very, very similar personalities. And then finally, of course, this mission doesn't go well. And it doesn't go well for Pug. I actually thought Pug was going to be the one that was going to escape alive. But no, he actually saves Colgan. He saves his master from being killed. He puts, I think Meckham is the one that picks up Master Colgan, puts him on the horse, and makes the horse ride off. So Colgan is the one that's going to survive. And I just think it was so fascinating, because I actually thought that Pug was going to be the one. But no, he's actually captured. And in my opinion, this capture is plot point 1. Like, this is the big plot point, the first one where Pug is captured, and I think he's going to be, you know, taken to their world, because you do hear, you know, some rumors of some Mid-Kimian people being taken to their world to become slaves. So I do think that's going to happen to Pug, unfortunately, which is very, very sad. Like, I think Pug was the only one that was captured. I think Mecha managed to run away. All the other knights, I think they were killed, which obviously being captured is much better than being killed. But yeah, in my opinion, Pug being captured is the plot point one of this book. And this is all I have for you guys today, so I really do hope you're enjoying this, because like I said, I'm having so much fun, and just seeing these things and just really trying to analyze them and trying to say, oh, like, this is plot point one, this is a rising action, I think this is too repetitive, I think this, I think that, and obviously, you know, this book, it doesn't hold up to what it used to be, in my opinion. It does have, you know, some flaws, and it's very classical fantasy, but I do enjoy it. Like, I do like it. I think it's such a wholesome read, which sounds very strange. Like, it sounds very strange because you have a lot of war, a lot of killing, a lot of, you know, just sadness, but I like it. I don't know, I just find it wholesome. You know, whenever I read classical fantasy, it just screams home to me, nostalgia to me, and I think that's why this book is being so wholesome. Yeah, so tomorrow I'm going to give you guys the rest of the chapters, and I will have The Magician Apprentice read for you. And here we go to my last update for this video, and in chapter 15 we do get some sort of confirmation of the foreshadowing of Thomas, because he was lost in the caves with the dragon, and the dragon actually gifted him something. It was an armor and I think a shield. I think it was. I don't know if he gifted him a sword as well. I don't remember for some reason. I think it was a sword and a piece of armor that, you know, it was very big on him, but the dragon was like, you know what, you're gonna grow into it, it's fine, you can take it. And the dragon actually also gave something to the dwarf, because one of the dwarves actually went back to look for Thomas, and he found him. So now Thomas has been fighting with the dwarves ever since against the Tsunade, and there's been something different about Thomas, because every time he wears that armor, he really grew into it, and it was strange, because he's like 14, so obviously, you know, the dwarves are like, this is weird. Like, he's actually growing taller, he's growing broader at a very, very fast pace. And you can just understand that the armor is actually doing something to him. The armor is much more ancient, so you can also tell that Pug was in fact chosen by the dragon to bear that armor. And this is actually, you know, pre-elves. So the people that are haunting that armor and the people that Thomas is seeing in these visions, they are very ancient people that lived even before the elves. So it's a language that he doesn't know, it's a culture he doesn't know, and they actually rode dragons. Like, these people actually rode dragons, and he is having the visions of a certain person, basically the one that wore the armor before Thomas, so he's having those visions, and he's actually becoming more like that person, which is a little bit scary, because they were a very, you know, aggressive people. They killed for anything, for any reason, like, for just, you know, the smallest of conflicts, they would just kill someone for it. So you can see also Thomas becoming more and more aggressive with the Tsunade, and even with other people. He's not fighting anyone, but he's, you know, replying in a very aggressive tone, and the dwarves are like, whoa, like, this is becoming way too scary. You are a monster in battle, and you've become really, really good at fighting because of the armor and the sword, but calm down, you know. But I did like the fact that Thomas was also chosen for something, and now I 100% think that he is going to, you know, have a better relationship with the Queen of the Elves. And also in this chapter, we actually do have a lot more world building when it comes to the Tsunade, and I like the fact that it's just being dropped to us like little hints, and it's just been given to us in a very, very slow-paced way, which it makes everything so much less confusing, because back in Creed, Arutha has been defending Creed all by himself, because his father and Liam, his older brother, went, you know, to the front lines with the king's army to fight the Tsunade there, so Arutha is charged to protect Creed, and they actually caught, you know, 3 prisoners, and those prisoners have been telling them, you know, because they've been there for like 3 years already, and they know a little bit of the Mid-Kimian language, so they can communicate a little bit, and they've been saying like, oh, like, this is how kind of we work, this is how we function, you know, in our world we are slaves, and if we are slaves, we are slaves for life. Like, there is no way to get out of this life. All I can do is obey orders and follow orders. That's all I'm good for. I'm good for nothing. If I don't follow orders, I'm killed immediately on the spot. And the Mid-Kimian people are just like, whoa, like, that's crazy. Like, that is absolutely crazy. We do have a few slaves, but you're not a slave forever. Like, you can get out of that life, but in the Tsunade world, you're not. Like, if you're born a slave, you die a slave. And even if you're not born a slave, if you become one, you die one. Like, there's just no option, no redeeming quality that you might, there's just no redeeming thing that you might do in order to stop being a slave. So learning a little bit more about the Tsunade is actually pretty cool. So in chapter 16, when it comes to the story, I do like the fact that we have different POVs. And you can tell that the author prepared for those POVs, for Aruta's POV, Thomas' POV, Pug's POV. Like, he prepared us for all these three people, which I absolutely love, because I thought it was just going to be, Pug's point of view. I do love the different points of view. However, I don't really like the time jump that was made. I just think it was so rushed and it was out of nowhere, because you just start reading this chapter and you're like, oh my god, like, one more year has passed, so we're 3 years into this war already. Like, just a few chapters back, it was the first year and we were going to the king. Like, why is this going so fast? I think if the author had put, a little note on top of the chapter, like, 2 years have passed, it would have been so much better, because mentally you're like, okay, so 2 years have passed, a lot has happened, a lot has changed, so you're like mentally prepared. But because you didn't really have that note and you just thrown into the story, and it wasn't even in the first sentence, it was like, it could have been in the first paragraph, but way down, and I'm just like, wow, like, so much time has passed already, like, what the fuck is happening? Like, I was a little bit lost, I'm not gonna lie, so I didn't really like how the author made the time jumps. And in this chapter, we are introduced to a new character, Amustrask. I think that's how he's called. These fantasy names, they are impossible sometimes to pronounce, but he's a typical sailor. He's funny, he's chilled, he's always cracking jokes, he's good at what he does. So I just thought it was so funny, because when I saw him, I was like, oh yeah, this is that typical sailor. He doesn't have a care in the world, he is so chill. He's, it's like the kids nowadays say, he has aura, he has swag. He is smooth when it comes to his moves, because I don't know, like, there's just something about him. Like, he's just so chill, so easygoing. He's never worried. He's never concerned. He's like, you know what? We're gonna get through this. We're all gonna do this. And the fact that he's like 50, or he's like 40 or 50 years old, makes it even better, because he's just like that old chill man that doesn't really give two fucks about anything. In chapter 17, we do have a little bit of growth from Coraline, because, she went through a lot with Pug's disappearance. She doesn't really know what happened to him, and she's actually in a relationship with Roland, because she realized, it was a crush, it was a fling with Pug, and I actually like Roland, who has been here for me, since day one, and I do like the relationship. I know some people don't really like it, but I don't mind it. I think it does make a lot of sense, because, like Coraline said, he's been there since the beginning. And yeah, she could be obviously in a very vulnerable state and looking for comfort, but I do like the relationship. I don't think it comes out of nowhere. And what I do like about Caroline is she's learning how to fight, because she's like, you know what, I'm useless. If the Tsunade people actually invade, Creed and our castle, I'm doomed. Like, I'm doomed. What am I supposed to do? Like, throw needles at them? And what I like about this is she learns how to fight because she realizes this is practical. This is not because I want to be, a tomboy, or I want to defy all of the rules against women. No, she's still very feminine. She loves dressing up. She loves makeup. She loves being feminine. It's just a practical thing. And I do like that. I just really like the fact that the author didn't really change her as a character. He didn't turn her into a tomboy all of a sudden. It was just really this thought process of, if they actually invade the castle, because it's going to happen sooner or later, I want to be able to defend myself. Like, I don't want to be useless to the point where I'm just going to die screaming because I don't know how to fight. So I absolutely love that, because it is very practical, and I don't really understand, like, I understand why they didn't teach women how to fight, but I also don't. Like, majority of the time, I really don't, because it's like, I understand that we're not going to be, as good as men, because we're not physically strong like men, but we can still do something, like, we can still do something and defend ourselves. So, honestly, good for her. And when it comes to Martin, like, I did say he was a very reserved and mysterious man, but there is a different side to him, which I absolutely love seeing in this chapter, because he's out in the woods with his friend Garden, trying to distract the Tsunade, trying to pinpoint the Tsunade against the Dark Elves that are migrating, so they can fight between themselves, and they have more time to prepare. And it's just so funny. Martin actually has a good sense of humor, because Garden, he's always complaining. He's like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. Like, this is so dangerous. We're always risking our lives. Like, why are we doing this? And Martin, he's just like, chill, man. Like, chill. It's gonna be fine. Like, we've done this so many times. You are a scaredy cat. Like, I don't understand why you're so concerned. We can run. It's fine. And I just absolutely love that, because you, like I said, you meet him as someone very serious, very reserved, very mysterious. He doesn't really talk much, but he does have a lot of sense of humor, and he laughs a lot, which to me, it was surprising, and I absolutely loved. And of course, you do learn how Martin does have, a lot of culture when it comes to other peoples, because, for example, I think the Tsunade are, like, challenging them at some point. Like, they just show up at the gates, and he's just, like, challenging them in a really weird way. And Naruta's like, I don't know what the hell he's doing. And Martin is like, oh, like, I've seen this in some other cultures, and I think he's challenging us. Like, to an honorable battle, I think he's honoring us, saying that we are a worthy enemy. I think that's what he's doing. And you can just tell, like, okay, Martin knows a lot about different cultures, because he does, hang out with the elves a lot. And then you do realize in this chapter that the Tsunade are doing something very, very weird. In the sense of, of, they are very suspicious because they always attack during the nighttime. It's always, they literally throw themselves at this wall, and so many of their warriors end up dying, and Arutha's just like, why is this happening? Like, they just keep throwing themselves at the wall and dying, and they don't even seem fazed by it. They don't even care. They don't change strategies. So you do start to realize, yeah, something is up. Like, something is up. This is not normal. And then in chapter 18, which is the last chapter of this book, of the part 1, because like I said, the Portuguese version is divided. The first book is divided. So this is Apprentice part 1. And in the ending, in the last chapter of this book, we do realize they were literally at nighttime digging a tunnel underneath the walls. So now they can actually enter the palace. They end up entering the palace, and this is where Caroline is the baddie, okay? Because Caroline and the women, they were all hiding, obviously, in the basement, and that's where they came from. Like, they actually dug a hole to the basement, and Caroline actually killed, like, 3 Tsunade warriors because they were so, like, distracted, they were still, like, digging the hole, taking the dirt and the dust everywhere. So, obviously, they were distracted, but the fact that Caroline killed 3 warriors, you go, sis, you go, girl, thank you so much. Like, this is why you teach women how to fight, because she actually did something, and she gave time for the women to run away, and then obviously reinforcements came, Roland came, and they all started fighting. I think they managed to block the pathway, so the Tsunade are not going to be a problem anymore in terms of invading the walls. But now they realize, okay, they're actually smarter than we thought. Like, they actually had a very sound strategy, and we just didn't see that strategy, which was insane. And this was everything that I've managed to, analyze. Obviously, I probably could have found, a lot more things, but I didn't really want to, make it so detailed to the point where I would take I took 2 months to read this book. So, most likely I would have taken 3 or 4 if I had so many more details. So, this was, kind of like a very, overall, a very simple analysis of this book, which is the first part, okay? I will emphasize again, this is not, the entirety of the first book. In the Portuguese version, this is part 1. So I still have Magician Master, I think that's what it's called. So that is the second part of the first book, when it comes to the English language. And I had so much fun, okay? I had so much fun analyzing this. And like I said, does this hold up? I don't think it does. Like, if I'm being completely honest, I read this first back in 2019, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the classical fantasy of it. I just loved everything. I loved every character, just everybody. And you know what? Like, Arutha, to this day, is still my favorite book boyfriend. Like, there has been no other character. There has been no other male character capable of surpassing Arutha. Like, I'm not even kidding you. I was obsessed with Arutha back in the day, and I still am. I'm still obsessed with him. I still love him. But does it hold up? No, it does not, because I've read so many better books, and that's just the reality of it. I just read so many other books that are better, structured, construed. The stories are just so much better and greater and bigger. But this still has, such a warm place in my heart, because like I said, this was one of the first, fantasies where I was just like, what? Fantasy is cool. Like, fantasy is cool. It's amazing. I don't know why I stopped reading fantasy. I need to continue, back then, I would read, 1 or 2 books every year. And with this series, I actually read the entire trilogy in 1 month. And that to me was insane and crazy. And I immediately bought the Empire trilogy, also by Raymond Feist, in the Tsunade world. And I also loved that one. I think a little bit more than this one, if I'm being honest, because that one is, political fantasy, so I do love that. But yeah, I just had so much fun with this, and although it doesn't really hold up, it still has a very special place in my heart. And if you do want to, start reading fantasy, a beginner-friendly one, this is the one for you. This is so beginner-friendly, so easy to understand. The world feels familiar, the characters also feel familiar, so I do highly recommend reading this book if you want to start reading fantasy. And with that, I will let you guys go. So please subscribe and like this video, because it does help my channel a lot, and it validates me and continues to motivate me to film all of these videos. And I will see you guys in my next video. Goodbye!